Welcome to Bald Move Pulp, your official outlet for all of the Loki talk. I'm Jim.
I'm Aaron.
Is it official? I think it's official because Bald Move made it official, right? We said this is the place where we're going to talk about Loki. So I think we can use official there. Today we're talking about season 2, episode 3, titled 1893. Aaron, this is the Chicago World's Fair, or World's Columbus Exposition if you're nasty. What'd you think of this episode?
What? World's
Yeah,
Columbus expedition? What?
yeah.
Columbus, not
Also,
Columbia?
World's Columbian Exposition.
Okay, because I know that was like an old-timey way to refer to America, Columbia.
Columbia? That's fucked up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
also known as the World Chicago World's Fair, which they don't make mention of here, but all of the artwork I saw for the Chicago World's Fair mentioned World's Columbian Exposition.
Hmm.
The World's Fair seems to be like a nickname, but
Well, Columbus is actively being deprecated,
yeah.
so that makes sense. Don't
Mhm.
want to lead with that. Don't want to lead with the mass murderer, enslaver, colonizer.
Yeah, it was apparently to celebrate the 400th anniversary of that, of Columbus arriving in the New World.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What'd
that's
you think?
I have a lot of mixed thoughts about this episode. It's a fine episode of Loki.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there was some bizarre choices taken with the performance of Kang that I wasn't sure about. But then again, this is a very rough, very early variant of He Who Remains, if he's even that. Um, and I was that was like I found kind of off-putting throughout the episode, just like trying to grok that character, like what is he about, and the weird speech patterns and mannerisms and whatnot. And then the other thing is like with the cliffhanger, mid-season cliffhanger of like oh, Ramona's got a secret, and I'm getting a little whiff of like, do they really know where they're going with this show? Now they might, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that kind of like on ancillary to those points too. Like it is weird to me that Loki is just unabashedly pro TVA. Like that he hasn't even pondered the idea of like, well, what if the TVA gets destroyed? Why do you think that will destroy all the timelines? All the timelines existed all the time in perpetuity until He Who Remains constrained him down to the one holy timeline. So like, why are you so? I'm kind of on Sylvie's side. Like, well, why are you so sure that this mass murderer con man was telling you the legit truth about what would happen to the universe if his machine stopped working? I get TVA probably fucked, but is that a bad thing?
Sure.
And we're just hurtling down this thing where it's like, I don't feel like Loki examined that at all. And I'm starting to share Sylvie's frustration with like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but do you hear what I'm saying? And it could be, I've seen some theories that like maybe this is like an Ouroboros and that like Loki and Mobius have always been part of the TVA and they have to be part of the TVA, and that's why this variant of Loki has to justify his existence in terms of the TVA. But I'm not quite there yet, and so like I said, I like this episode in isolation, but I'm a little concerned with where they're going this season
Mm-hmm.
because like there was a clear thorough line for season one that they kind of subverted at the last minute, and now I don't feel like I've gotten my footing of like what what are we trying to do here? What do you think?
Yeah, I feel you. I don't have. I'm not going to get too worried, I guess, and worked up about that because I don't know. I don't take the plot of these things too seriously, I guess. As far as like the performances, I actually quite like what Jonathan Majors did with this. Uh,
Really?
yeah, with this character, Victor Timely character. It's different from Kang, but I imagine Kang in his position would change anybody, right? Like anybody who found themselves the Time Lord of the universe would probably be affected by that in some ways. And so he's a little more like crazy. And this guy has like it's speech impediments that are seem like an awkward, unsure person as opposed to Kang, who seemed like just nothing matters. I'm just having fun here, kind of thing. So I don't know. It's possible this isn't the right variant of Kang. That's a huge possibility. They just
Yeah.
have the wrong guy, and that Kang sent them
Mhm.
to here for some other reason that not even Miss Minutes knows about. Um, but I like the performance. I think it's a wild performance. It's something that shouldn't work on the face of it, and I think Jonathan Majors is able to pull it off, and that was surprising to me. I never once found myself going, "This feels like a character who's too ridiculous."
Mm.
Even though he's got the hair, even though he's got the speech pattern, even though he's got these crazy inventions, it struck me more as like, it's comedy to start off with, right? He's supposed to be this zany character, like a Doc Brown or like a
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
Gene Wilder from Young Frankenstein, right? He's this
Sure.
lunatic. I mean, even the hair is very similar
Mad
to that.
scientist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a mad scientist. That all worked for me surprisingly well because I could see it totally not.
Yeah, I just like I didn't. Last season, He Who Remains was kind of a wild performance too. It was like
Absolutely.
zany and like kind of all over the place, and I liked it. And I just found
Uh-huh.
this one a little bit more distracting, where it's
Okay.
like something about the unhinged quality of the Kang from last season, where a guy who's been spending eternity monitoring the timelines, and he's kind of driven mad by it,
That made
whereas a
some sense.
guy at the start, I wasn't expecting him to be kind of started off like, and this guy comes across like steampunk Frederick Douglass by way of Max Headroom,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
it just was a lot. It was just a lot.
It is a lot for sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I found it like distracting in like an unpleasant kind of like, this is taking me out of the character kind of way. Um, but they did establish something, another quality that they might be indicating all Kang variants possess. This pathological reluctance to share credit and partner with people, which might be why the Kangs all
Mhm.
went to war, because, and then there's like even an inherent contradiction there where, the first time that Victor finds out that essentially Renslayer, and I'm gonna if you hear me call her Renslayer, it's because I found myself doing that a lot in the notes, because there's a small town north of where I grew up called Rensselaer,
Huh,
and it's
okay.
so close to Renslayer that I kind of, so that's what I'm saying if I slip into that. But like he asks, like, well, you guys are doing the exact same thing. Why aren't you working together? Why aren't you in cahoots? And but like you could say the same thing about all the Kang variants. Like, you have
Yeah.
so much in common. Is there no way you guys can share power in the timeline? There's got to be one battle for supremacy. But apparently, that's a very pathological need, and you can see it driving him to where
Yeah, they're
the
playing a lot
second
with
someone
that.
suggests that he might have to partner, rely on somebody, he bristles and does something wild and crazy.
No, I
But
don't do partners. Yeah, they're playing with
yeah,
that with Loki too, right? Like the idea that he is always the guy who switches sides. That's just his role. That's just who he is. They're
yeah,
making these de facto statements about characters and their
yeah,
personality traits. And I think it's working pretty well. If you look at it, like the easy thing for Kang to do, if he notices this about himself, is to fix this, is to give it to someone else, give it to a
yeah.
person who is more worthy of it, a person who doesn't have that innate need to fight for something and take all of the credit for themselves. But that wouldn't be within his personality, right?
And it's just like, what does that say about him being gifted the TVA manual, which all, like, you see him as a young child, clearly he's trying to fuck around and making like batteries, or he's doing, he's clearly gifted. But like, what does that do to a gifted person if someone hands them all their future inventions on a silver platter? It's like, he's
Sure.
clearly like infatuated almost with Ouroboros. Like, he sees that as like, oh, this is the worthy mind. But
Visionary, yeah.
the idea that he would so he's already in a partnership, and is that part of it, that like he, like, at a young age he's forced to concede credit to some other person, and he just can't bear, his ego won't bear him to, like, to stand on one more giant shoulders, or to lean on someone else for support. It's an interesting character quirk,
Uh-huh.
especially when we know he recorded to Renslayer that he valued her partnership. um
Well, there's also the big secret he's got about her that's going to make her very
oh,
angry.
right,
So
with
that could
with
be
with
all
Miss
fluff,
Minutes.
that could
But can you
be
trust anything Miss Minute says? Because that's the other
sure,
thing. I did not
sure.
have Miss Minutes being horny for He Who Remains
Yeah.
on my list of what
A
was in the show's
clock.
envelope. When that
Uh-huh.
shit started up, I'm like, this is wild.
And I
This is
saw it immediately. I was like, "Oh no, this is
yeah.
I'm not sure I like this interspecies love story they're telling, but okay, let's
And
do
a
it."
and a cat fight between Miss Minutes and Renslayer.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, you're right. That might tie in that like this was just all a ruse he used to keep. That was her. That was the thing that he used to keep her on the treadmill.
Yeah.
Um,
What if he stole the TVA manual from her in the first place? And it was always
and
supposed to
why
be
isn't
hers because she's not like him, you know? Who knows? Who knows?
and why isn't Ouroboros the one running things? Because now it's like I always thought it's like, well, Ouroboros is like the second fiddle, the second banana. But like
He seems
I guess it
kind
works in a timey-wimey but way maybe of
of
like yeah, Ouroboros of like inspiration eating its own tail, but like he seems that he did all of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, right? Like if Kang was supposed to be the guy who got the book, who gave him the book in the first place? Because here it seems to be Kang intended for him to get the book. You know, there's that like snake eating its own tail kind of thing too. But yeah, I don't know. OB doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who could lead an organization like this. He's not an idea guy for sure. He's a technical guy because he's so fucking oblivious. Like the things that people suggest to him seem pretty obvious, and he once they're suggested, he's like, "Oh yeah, that's obvious. Let's do that." Uh,
Yeah.
or he's like,
But
"Well, we can't do that, and here's why." But he never seems to think of these ideas before anybody else, right? He's the last one to come up with the idea.
yeah. I don't know because like part of that is like I think in the first episode his ideas were being incepted in real time, so it made him seem scatterbrained. And
Yeah,
this
yeah.
one, like I will say this about OB, Mr. Kwan has gotten a belly laugh out of me every week for these 3 weeks. And this line where he's like, where Mobius says, "We could hack into it," and he's like, "Oh my God, we can! That's such a relief!" Like
Uh-huh.
it's the way he delivers those lines is so funny. But
Totally.
yeah, it's like the thing about other thing is like I try to calm them down because like Marvel's time shit has never been very crunchy. It's
Sure,
like
sure.
I remember in Infinity War where they're just like, look, this isn't even Terminator level of consistency. This is just a Marvel timeline where there isn't really causality, or at least they haven't explored that yet, and it's kind of a multiverse, but not in the way that you might under. So it's like but on the other hand, that's what when the show's all about that. It's not just a MacGuffin to do some other struggle with them, but like it's all about like and you got people named Mobius and Mobius and Ouroboros. Like they're trying to get me to think about time travel in a crunchy kind of theory type of way. And I don't know. I hope it holds together. I hope it holds together.
I'm also looking at this show as like a time loom itself. Like there are an infinite number of branching possibilities in every
Mm,
episode we get. We're pruning away all the
yeah.
ones that we're not going to tell that story of, right?
Keep the sacred timeline.
Yeah. And eventually, yeah, once the series is over, we'll have our sacred timeline and we can look back at it and say, "Oh yeah, this makes sense given what we know about the universe now." But we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm like I said, not taking it too seriously, not getting too worked up about it. Just trying to have fun with the show, and I think so far it's been delivering very well. I had a lot of fun with
Yeah, I'm
this
super
episode too.
entertained. I'm super entertained, but I always am a little bit half guard up with these Disney Plus things. That as much as I like them in the middle of it, it's like ultimately is this going to, collapse like a bad souffle? But we'll see.
Did you run
I'm, I'm,
into
I'm enjoying my ride as I'm going along through it.
Yeah, it's definitely not perfect. I thought that when we first see this episode, I'm like, okay, he gets a TVA handbook. Okay, he's got this machine that he's created. Well, we've got a Doc
Uh huh.
Brown in Back to the Future 3 situation where mustering all of his scientific abilities and understanding the concepts, he's able to spit out one ice cube
Right.
with
Yeah. Yeah.
years
Yeah.
of dedication
Because
and
the material
building.
science and
Yeah,
all
they
that's
just
just
don't
not
have the
there.
technology to build the things that he needs to build, even though he
What's he going to
knows
do?
how to build them.
Mine uranium himself?
Right,
Like,
right. And we run into that problem, and they very smartly tell us that yes, that's a problem he's been having, right? But
Hmm.
then they subvert that with the crude time stick. I think that was a huge mistake.
Ooh,
I think that was
interesting.
stupid. It would be just as easy to have her hit him with like a billion volts of electricity, right? Just like a huge amount
Hmm.
of electricity and just kill him. Have that be the threat instead of a time stick there. Because
But
there's no way
isn't
he could build a
a
time stick.
prototype isn't a prototype time stick? It not just be that there's like a huge surge of power. He can't make it do anything temporal, but like when
I
she hit it
mean,
with that mannequin, it looked like it vaporized.
yeah, but it looked exactly like the effect of a time
Yeah,
stick, and
I
it
guess
was
you're
meant
right.
to be a crude time stick, and I think that's
Yeah,
dumb. But that's
yeah.
honestly my only real complaint with this episode. I think everything
I guess
else
I'm
was a
not.
lot of fun.
I guess I'm not opposed of him building a crude time stick that's like 5 times the size and probably massively more inefficient. And because also I don't know what that temporal loom I think works, but not in the way that you could base an industry out of. Like it's like is that all fraud? The
I
temporal
don't
loom like.
know. Yeah, the
Because like, where did that electricity come from? Did he just tap into city mains and just turn on the tap?
I couldn't tell if that was a thing that was actually doing something with temporal energy or if that
Yeah.
was just electricity, which I
Because
would
like,
buy.
and they really put their thumb on the flim flam side when you see the councilman show up with the hydraulic pants
Yes.
or whatever. It's like, well, that's obviously bullshit. That's like something out of Mad fucking magazine, man. That's not gonna
Uh,
work. And if it did, it'd probably break your legs and sever your spine.
right. Fold you up like a
So
pretzel.
it
Yeah.
it does seem like they're making him out to be a con man, but he also is
Right.
has working designs. He just can't. He understands. He's got the
In
understanding.
theory.
He just
Yeah.
can't make it work. Yeah. So it's like I don't even know that's a fraudulent tie. It's just a loom that doesn't have the hyperspace capacitors or whatever that you need to make it work.
Right. Because you need to mine some material that he doesn't have access
Right.
to.
It takes adamantium and vibranium and
Sure.
unobtainium all together.
And insanium. Yeah. So I don't know. It's another good episode. I really enjoyed it. Maybe we should get into the recap.
Before we do, I want to say one other kind of unrelated thing. I love it when Marvel does something fancy with the
I was.
Marvel stuff, and this kind of old-timey Ramin Djawadi player piano version of the Marvel. It's instantaneously recognizable as
Uh
Marvel,
huh.
but also entirely in that style. I don't know why. I just feel like that's a magic trick when you can just transpose some. It's like, there's this phrase amongst the young people where they're saying, like if you ever known a person and then another person, it's like they're that version in cursive. Like it's like, I think that's wild. There's a guy I watch on TikTok who does like he'll play a song and he seamlessly every 5 seconds changes the drumming technique. It's like, oh, this is drumming like this thing would do. This is a double bass metalhead drummer, and it's like it's cool. And they did a great job. I
Hmm.
highly enjoyed the old timey Marvel logo.
For sure.
Now we can get to the recap.
All right, we start off in 1868, Chicago, Illinois, on the sacred timeline. Renslayer meets Miss Minutes, who says that he remains, wants her to put a package in this window. And Miss Minutes also tells her that he remains is dead, but that when he returns, they'll all get to be by his side, ruling together, as long as she delivers this package. So she does. And then a young boy gets it, and we see that it's the TVA handbook.
And speaking of music, the music cue they hit, I don't even know if this moment it warrants it, but they uncork some epic fucking Kang music when you see this little boy touch that
Mm.
book. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty awesome. I thought so like the Great Chicago Fire, legend has it was set off by Mrs. O'Leary's cow. And I know that they said this was 2 years before, but I thought it was interesting. We're in the shantytown part of Chicago, and there's conspicuously a lit lantern with a cow just hanging out. And I thought,
Oh
is the last
wow.
thing we see that cow going to kick it or something? But apparently the time of it's but it's there. I don't know if we're supposed to understand that that's literally Mrs. O'Leary's cow, but
Uh,
it's pretty funny.
I've not heard this story at the start of the Chicago Fire.
Really? That's
Mm-mm.
the legend that like there was an old Irish woman had a barn and her cow kicked over a lantern and that's what started. Now, apparently, because I actually looked into that this morning, apparently that's all a bunch of anti-immigrant Irish immigrant bullshit that they were just looking to pin a
Wow.
scapegoat, and that this fire started on near her property, and it's like, oh, she was drunk and milking her cow late at night, and the cow just wanted to sleep and was angry and it kicked its like, but yeah, I don't think fire forensics were in a place in the 1860 Chicago that they could probably conclusive figure any of that shit out. But maybe this is Mrs. O'Leary's cow.
Could be. It's a good thing Renslayer is dressed plausibly 19th century. Her outfit is like borderline something you could see someone wearing.
Yeah, I wonder if that's one of the reasons the TVA has this kind of weird, timeless quality, because
Yeah.
because yeah, like OB could go back into the 1850s and it would look weird what he's wearing, but not like
Yeah.
if you showed up in like jeans and a t-shirt or something, like that's just, you would look, I don't know, like what would people make of someone showing up in like acid wash jeans and a logo t-shirt? You'd look like a weirdo.
You would absolutely stand out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and it's
also
not
back then
some
people are
like
so
future
provincial.
stuff.
It's like they always did that in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Anytime Data showed up in 20th century Earth, it's like, he's from France, or he's from Brazil, and it's like people are like, fuck, I don't know. Maybe there are people like albino people from France.
Yeah, you could always say you're from somewhere exotic, right, and far away.
Yeah,
But you
yeah.
show up in like Captain America's uniform, and
It's
you're gonna have
bad
the
news.
authorities on you. Yeah.
True. In any era.
Yeah. No one in France dresses like that either, dude. We know.
Yeah. The only time you see Captain America and don't call the cops is in like Children's Hospital. If a Captain America lookalike or is doing the rounds. Otherwise, like, yeah, that guy's running around, he's getting the cops called on him.
Yep. And we obviously, I don't think there's any question here that this is he who remains, right? This boy. I mean, it's made clear, but
Oh
even
yeah.
in that scene, you're like, oh, this is him.
But even then, they introduce the idea that like every Kang variant doesn't become a Kang, and certainly every Kang variant doesn't become a He Who Remains.
Mm-hmm.
That there's something singular about that. Now that could be He Who Remains propaganda, but it's like Miss Minutes and Ravonna seem like they're very convinced that this is something singular about the He Who Remains, and but they're also
Yep.
the idea that you can make a He Who Remains. Like maybe that was his idea, is like, I'm gonna die, but I also have the seed that I know will make me become me. So that's the stuff I'm like, maybe I got to see how it plays out.
Do you think that's the actual he who remains? That's the one that eventually won that war?
I think that He Who Remains thinks that he can respawn himself by giving this particular Kang or Victor or whatever this book. Now,
Because that's what they're telling him through this whole episode,
Yeah.
right? Do you think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's true, that he is
But
that
I don't know if
guy?
he's the actual one or just like the He Who Remains is convinced that he will become him if you give him at this right age, at this particular day, this particular book. So it's like, there again, there's the Ouroboros of it all.
Uh-huh.
Is he going back in time to literally add himself in his youth, or I'm not
Or
sure.
just the right one for the job? I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
if
it's
it's
the
like
right one
if
to fight Sylvie. I don't know.
yeah, and it's like there's the causality of it. It's like if Kang generated by someone giving him this book, then how did Kang ever originate? Because my understanding of Kang, he's just a brilliant scientist that lucked into all this stuff. So like my understanding is like this is not a special Kang. This is just a Kang that the Kang Prime knew that if I gave him this book, it would kickstart him into the Prime. But that's just my best guess based on how I understand the time travel they're doing on the show.
Yeah, I assume there's a lot of obviously all this plan is based on things that he's seen and he knows need to happen exactly so to create the outcome he wants. And it feels to me like Sylvie's killing of him is part of that. I know there was a time
Yeah.
during that whole sequence at which he couldn't see the future anymore, but to me
Yeah.
that's because he was now part of that great, vast stretch of information. He wasn't the thing anymore, it was the plan itself. And so
Right.
the plan that he set in motion was to go create a different Kang, and it might be a different, gentler kind of Kang that he needs to not have Sylvie murder him, right? Like, because at the end of this episode, Sylvie, against her better judgment, spares his life, And it might be that this is the one version of him that could have talked his way out of the situation that would make Sylvie not kill him.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Was him goading Sylvie into killing him like this elaborate Thanos gambit, where it's like all the things have to happen, and then it's like he couldn't see the future because there's only two distinct possibilities. Like either Sylvie kills him or he doesn't, and if she didn't kill him, then I guess he'd have to try again. But yeah, like there needed to be some kind of cycle of rebirth to launch an whatever his grand plan is to the next level is what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
So I kind of agree with you there.
Okay. Boy, it's a lot to dig into in that first scene there. We kind of stretched through the whole episode here, but let's go back to the TVA, where the number of timelines is growing and threatening to overwhelm the loom, like it has been. And they figure if they could find Renslayer, they find Miss Minutes, and Miss Minutes could help them fix the loom.
So this is where one of the central things that bugged me, especially on second watch, is there's a clear implication, an inescapable conclusion, which is General Doc saved the entire universe by committing the multiple genocides of trillions of people last episode. Because what this show is telling me, that if she hadn't done that, the loom would have blown up, the TVA would have been destroyed, and the entire timelines would collapse, and everyone would have died. So General Dox was right. But the entire emotional payload of last episode, which didn't honestly work, was that she's a uniquely heinous individual. But I can't square these two.
What if they didn't have to waste time going after Dox, and that would have given them the time to go after Miss Minutes to fix the
Dox
loom?
had done an all hands trying to find Renslayer instead of going back to frantically pruning. Yeah, there's that.
That's
but as it actually, yeah, it's hard to do a contra positive, but
yeah.
But it did feel to me like kind of Dox is vindicated, because if she hadn't done that, the TVA would have been destroyed. And if the TVA is destroyed, all timelines cease. Then, as bad as it was to kill 90% of the existing timelines, it's better than killing 100%. So it's a little messy.
Yeah. No, and I mean, they wanted to. Yeah. I don't know. It is messy for sure. Because they've been, controlling it and averting the crisis of the loom overloading for eons by just pruning other timelines, right?
Yeah, but there was before the loom existed, there was ungoverned time. And in that ungoverned time, a man named Kang was able to scrape together enough technology to make the loom. So it's like, it seems like the universe was doing just fine unmanaged, and it was Kang's maniacal need to just have the one guy. Which he says saved the universe, but also you guys could have just stopped fighting, like that. So it's like, I don't know. It's hard. And they might have some really clever timey-wimey thing where I'm like, hats off to you guys. But I see this as an obvious contradiction, and no one is like everyone in the show that I feel like smart people that should be like, hey, wait a minute. No one's doing that. They're just crashing ahead with the plans that they essentially hatched late last season. So I'm like I said, I'm not calling bullshit. I'm just like seeing where bullshit might be.
Sure. Yeah. You're sniffing around to see if there's
picking up these breadcrumbs. It's all about these breadcrumbs I'm picking up, you know?
And you're tasting them to see if they're bread or bullshit.
Right. That's the only way to tell. The taste test.
So Loki and Mobius go back to 1893. Well, they actually go back to 1868 first. I don't know. And then they go to 1893 to the place where Renslayer was twice. She was here 25 years apart, 2 times. And they wonder why she'd go there and then decide to go to 1893. Oh, it's the World's Fair. That must be interesting. So they're going to go there. They hear a newspaper boy shouting about ghost clocks and realize this must be Miss Minutes.
Yeah, it was funny that Mobius is walking through talking about how they're going to carefully assemble clues, keep their ears to the ground, and then this guy comes like, Ghost Miss Minutes, terrifying the Midway.
Literally shouting it at him.
And there's also like offhand comment where Loki's like, I can't believe this is the same city, when they go from like 1868 to the giant glow up, which is the city had burnt down, they'd rebuilt it, and then there's the middle of the World's Fair. It's like, it's not the same city. It's the second city. I thought that was pretty funny.
The shocking thing that they say to me is that no major figures arise from here, like none from Chicago in 1868 or the ensuing years, like none.
Yeah. Like,
What
are
was
we
New
talking
York like
major,
the
like
only
on this?
going concern in America at that point? None.
Well, I was wondering, like, are they talking like major on the scale of like Kang and Thanos and Galactus and things like
Sure.
that, or major like Thomas Edison invented his light bulb here? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either. It just seemed like a bold statement, but they're going with it. So Loki and Mobius have to kill some time at the fair, waiting for the ghost clock event, and they stumble upon this Norse god display, which Loki is not on, and he's a little jealous. It's kind of a theme of this episode too, a little jealousy. They see a sign about temporal marvels and Victor Timely, and they decide to attend that event.
I enjoyed Owen Wilson constantly shoving Cracker Jack in his mouth throughout these scenes. I thought it was funny that Loki
I
said that
love it.
Cracker Jack tastes like ash. Is his Asgardian taste buds work wrong? Because Cracker Jack tastes like mini. Maybe if you got a burnt piece of popcorn, but I think the caramel coating would
Yeah.
still
Maybe it's the
go
caramel he
along.
objects to. Maybe it's the burnt nature of the sugar, but it's caramelized. It's not burnt.
It's a wild way to describe the taste of Cracker Jack, like
Yeah,
burning.
for
Like
sure.
like Ralphie describes
Or
tobacco
does he
on.
smell the residuals of the Chicago fire? Is that what he's getting at? Does he think that like
Oh,
everything in the
it's
city?
a Second City joke. Oh, maybe his
Maybe.
Asgardian nose is too sensitive.
Yeah, yeah. I love
Um,
how Mobius is just using this as an excuse to experience the fair. He just wants to go around and eat
yeah,
caramel
uh-huh.
corn and ride rides and see the sights in the
Oh, it's a
guise
high.
of
The Cracker Jack stands a high
relating.
traffic area. That's where you'd meet people.
Yeah, it's amazing.
This scene with Balder, Odin, and Thor, I think works on two levels because I think it's a meta commentary on things that are often labeled against the mighty Thor is not a careful, respectful depiction of Norse culture,
Sure.
right? It's anything but. And if the Norse people were like a repress like if Norway was like a third world repressed overrun colonialized culture, it would be unconscionable to depict their ways and religions and stuff in this way. But since they're not, it's like kind of fair game, and I think it's this Loki commenting on it, and also it just lets Tom Hiddleston be just a really insecure jealous little brother, and he plays it like not in a camp way. It's like dead, and it's just
Hmm.
deadpan, and that makes it even funnier. Like where he's just like, Thor's not that tall.
Yeah,
It's thieving. It's so funny. It's so funny.
it is. It's
I,
quite good.
especially with. I don't think Mobius is doing this to shine him on either. It's like legit. It was like, oh yeah, I
He's
even
Balder.
forget you're one of them.
Uh huh.
You're a god. Wow, it just blows my mind. Like it's such an insult.
But it's so true, right? Like in the show, you can be forgiven for it, especially this season so far. He hasn't done much God
Yeah.
stuff, you know.
Right. Yeah.
He's disappeared a couple of people, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Most of the
Yeah.
time, when he's
And
using godlike powers, it's machinery.
yeah, and even Loki, I mean, even Thor is a fairly ridiculous character in the MCU.
Hmm.
Like, you can forget that yeah, he is a god, and every once in a while, though, they get to those majestic notes with him. Like, yeah, when he comes down and was it Avengers? Is the Infinity War the first one where he comes down to Wakanda, like in the thunder, like fucking yeah, God of Thunder. But most of the time, he's
Yeah.
just like a drunken frat bro goofball.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just him saying that and then Thor's not that tall. Really funny.
And we go over to this temporal Marvel show with Victor Timely, who was pretty obviously Jonathan Majors. You could tell from the very first line. I didn't know. I guess I didn't know it from the sign. I wasn't like, oh, we must be getting here to Kang stuff. I probably should have known.
I did
Um,
from the trailer because I saw him doing his Victor stuff in the trailer. So I'm like, as soon as I saw Temporal Marvel, this is probably
oh,
it's
you saw
probably
a
him.
trailer? Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we're at the show. They spot Renslayer there, but they play it cool temporarily while the show plays out. And it's He Who Remains, or at least a prototype version of him. He's invented a temporal loom, which he demonstrates to the audience to light some light bulbs. Mobius says, well, we have to get him back to the loom to use his aura to stop the meltdown. But after the show, Renslayer is the first to approach him, says we got to talk. But then the whole room seems to want this loom. They get in a bidding war, um, and he ends up selling the loom to somebody for $1,000. And we'll kind of stop there for a second.
I couldn't believe the crowd was delighted and excited by this display. I would, the second that thing started throwing lightning bolts into the auditorium's theater, I'd be heading for
Mm-hmm.
the exit. But everybody's just like, "Wow, it's all so cool." I guess they
Especially
didn't
in a
know any
city
better.
that burned to the ground 15
Yeah,
years earlier or whatever.
yeah. This was a
Thousands of dead. Yeah.
wild display of power. And my question is like, where's the flim flam of it? It's like obviously he's cheating. It doesn't do what it says it does, but there's also the idea of like it's kind of a prototype in the sense that like if he had the right materials and technology, it would work, but it doesn't. And I'm wondering how the guy like he comes out with like two burnt pieces of cable and is like, Victor, you screwed me over. And I'm like, how were you able to tell within 5 minutes of looking at this machine that looked like it catastrophically failed at the end that it was flim flam? But I guess you can.
Yeah, it's tough to know for sure.
Like it feels like the type of thing that it would take a scientist taking it back to his lab and tearing it apart before you could be like, oh, this fucking doesn't work, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe it blew up at the show because it did seem to blow
It
up and
did
burn
blow
out.
up.
And
But you bought
so,
it as is, fucker. You saw it blow up. You paid $1,000 for it. Go
right,
fuck yourself.
that should be his excuse. So
That's what
hell,
I would be at Victor. It's like, what? Do you thought it worked? Like it worked the one time until I overloaded it. But
mm-hmm.
here it's, how much you going to pay for a overloaded temporal loom?
Yeah. You want a working
You
one,
can
it'll
find a
cost you
working,
4K.
yeah. If you want a working one, try to find one on the open market.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I talked about the real Doc Brown problem that I thought he had, but that is addressed in this very scene, or the next scene, really, where they're talking about it. I was more worried for his safety at that point. A black man walking down the streets of 1893 Chicago with $1,000 in cash in his pocket. That seemed
Yeah,
dangerous. I don't even know how he got out of that room,
yeah.
let
Especially
alone down the street.
so when they dropped the boy on him, like my head snapped back. I'm like, all right, this is not that modern day America is not racist, but like it cranks up the dial quite a bit as you go back in time.
Oh yeah.
But it's a northern city, Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure there are worse places for a black man to have $1,000 in 1893.
Yep, yep. Anything south of Mason Dixie line, probably.
Mm-hmm. So Renslayer, Mobius, and Loki all chase down uh, Victor. I don't know. I'm calling he who remains. It becomes apparent that he is a con man and he's chased by the people who bought the loom. Gives him the slip on the Ferris wheel, and then Mobius tells the TVA they've got a he who remains variant and they're going to try and bring him back. And they say Casey found a weird temp pad reading. Does this play out? Is this where Sylvie is coming from? Because she's going to show up here in a second.
They don't really make it. In fact, the first time I watched it, because the first time I watched this, I just don't take notes. I just watch it, and I remember thinking like, what? I wonder what that's going to turn out to be. When I watched it, it's like there's a 10-second delay, but it's obviously Sylvie showing up.
That's what I assumed. Yeah, they don't make
it is
explicit.
interesting why she's so strange, but not something that they could catalog, right? But I guess this version of the TVA has never fought Sylvie.
Yeah, they're working in a fairly diminished capacity at the moment.
Yeah, like this isn't the same version of TVA last year.
Mm-hmm.
This is a different version of the TVA. So.
Yeah, all new leaders.
Or wait, that's not true. What Loki jumped into is the past version of the TVA. It's the same TVA, it's just a TVA in the past.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like the makeup of the people there, because all the people who would normally be leading this are off either working against it or sidelined.
And is
Miss
Minutes literally like the brains of this place? Like if she's not there, like their computer, because like I don't understand why they wouldn't recognize Sylvie's temporal signature, unless this is the showrunners telling us, the writers telling us that there's something different or off about her.
Maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. There's some fun chase scenes here. They're going to do this throughout the episode, but I really like the Ferris wheel setting here, with him tricking the bad guys to get in, or the bad guys, the guys chasing him to get in, and then sneaking out and forcing them to ride it, and then
I liked it. Yeah,
getting
because
back in and
hmm
going around once as they're having this confrontation. That was a lot of fun.
and the guys are sitting there like fuming the whole time, looking
See
at
it for the other
him. You
car. Yeah.
know, yeah. And like, how pissed you would be if you got stuck on a Ferris wheel, because that's a huge ass Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
You're not getting down for an hour, dude, and like
No.
you're just fuming the whole time. There's no way you're gonna catch this guy. I like this guy. Like, I thought it was the confrontation where the guy stepped in front of Loki and he stepped on his foot. I thought that was funny just because this guy's a giant of a man and Loki's canonically a frost giant. Like he's walking around like he's Tom Hiddleston, but like he's this
It's Thor
he's
2
a
all
fucking
over again.
yeah. So it's like I like the idea that this dude is like bullying this like looks like a small or I guess average sized guy, and not only is he a Norse god, but he's also just a legit probably bigger than this guy too.
Yep. So Sylvie shows up to kill He Who Remains on the Ferris wheel. And Loki and her end up arguing about the TVA in front of him. Meanwhile, Mobius tells Renslayer that they need her help to save the TVA, but she's not willing. Eventually, Sylvie blasts everybody out of the Ferris wheel, and Renslayer releases Miss Minutes, who terrifies the crowd, grows gigantic, starts menacing them, and then she grabs He Who Remains and gets away.
I don't get why Loki is so pro TVA. That's the thing that I'm having trouble with, because like everything that Loki is saying, or it's like Loki's arguing with Sylvie from the perspective as if it should be obvious and she should be on board with like we need to protect the TVA. And like I got last episode, that's a wrong tack to take with her. And he tries it just again without any kind of change or variant of just like it's saying the same things over again instead of trying a different tack. I thought it was a little frustrating, especially since, again, why are we going along with what He Who Remains says about how shit works?
Right,
Because
there's two competing interests here, right? There's not wanting to prune billions or trillions or quadrillions of
yeah,
people on the timeline, an infinite number of people on the timelines. And then there's, if we don't, the timelines will produce a bunch of Kangs who are going to fight and end the universe potentially, because that's what Kang said.
and the evidence we have is Kang said so.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, we know a lot more because we've seen Ant-Man and the Wasp 3 and some other things, but like, why in this show is Loki so fucking convinced by this?
I
And
mean,
why
the
is he
seeing the
convinced?
future stuff, I think, was fairly convincing, right? Like, they tried to kill him. They just tried to straight up murder him, and at every point, he knew exactly what they were going to do, and there was no chance they could do it. So
Mhm.
it's fairly convincing when someone who can manifestly see the future tells you that this thing is true.
But he's saying something self-serving for him, like
True.
you know, and
True.
the story he would tell is like, oh, multiple lines are chaos, and there can only be the one sacred timeline, and I'm the only one keeping it all together. When it could just be, it's like, well, you just got a temporary victory, and then you cemented it by making sure no one else could exist. Because I just
Totally.
want
No,
I just
I'm
want
with you.
Sylvie to be like, I just want Sylvie to say the following sentence to Loki:
Uh-huh.
Was there a time before the TVA, and how did the universe behave then?
Hmm.
And then I want Loki to have a blank look on his face and be like, "Oh fuck, I have no idea. I'm
Well,
taking all my
or he can
cosmology."
say, well, yeah, there was a time before the TVA and it resulted in a war that almost ended the entire multiverse. And then she can say, how do you know that?
Yes. Did you read it in the Bible? Essentially, you know, like
Uh-huh.
that's what I'm saying. It's like there's almost like a faith-based thing that Loki's going on, or I'm just not getting something.
No, I think you're
But
right.
okay,
I think Loki has bought into the idea that Kang is actually telling the truth. And he's just running with that. But it brings you to the question of, well, yeah, I mean that's it, right? Like his wanting to preserve the TVA comes all out of that, of just believing
and
Kang.
you could go ultimate nihilist and be like, if it is the case that our universe can only be maintained by the constant destruction of every other universe, what right does this universe have to exist at all? You
Well,
know?
isn't it better that one universe exists than all of them be destroyed?
I don't know. Is it better? I guess it's like,
I'm just throwing up arguments here. Yeah.
yeah, but like I was like, if you have a vampires are real, right? Is it better to have a world infested with vampires that are constantly sucking the life out of people, or is it better to have just a planet full of vampires, or better have no planet at all? I don't know.
Sure.
I mean, I guess that's essentially the life we're living on. We have to eat and consume things to survive, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not sure where the show's going with, and it's getting frustrating because like even if Loki believes that, he knows Sylvie doesn't, and it's like he's a too
Mm-hmm.
smart, and his whole thing is he's a trickster, mischief maker kind of guy. Like, could he not come up with a better argument than just saying the same damn thing
Fair.
to himself over and over again?
He needs to
Like,
come up with a way to
Loki,
prove it to her.
would
Yeah.
this argument work on you? Because this is you, and it's not working on it, and it's been 3 episodes now that you've been trying. Like, something else, please. If Sylvie comes back and this same fucking conversation happens again, I'll be wroth, like an Asgardian god. The lightning bolts will start coming out of my ass. I just don't know what I don't to do. It's not fun to watch.
I agree. Something's got to change there. Because neither of them seem convinced. Although it feels like something may have changed here.
That's the
In
thing.
Sylvie
Sylvie
by the
lets
end.
him win. She's like, fine, we'll have it your way.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think we'll be on that treadmill much longer
Agreed.
if we're not already off it. They definitely, like, speaking of branching timelines, they definitely created a branch with this Miss Minute stunt, right? Like, there's a branch of this universe now where the story of the Chicago World's Fair is that a fucking giant ghost clock terrorized everyone out of the thoroughfare there.
Yeah, it's I mean it doesn't have to, yeah, obviously it's like, there's real life events where people have convinced there's been, monsters in different cities and whatnot. So it's like but like yeah, like checked a Wikipedia article of the World's Fair in Chicago. There was no no menacing ghost clock.
No,
So
not heard of it.
Sacred Timeline has taken a little deviation already, it seems like.
Yeah.
It was really funny though.
Uh-huh.
Like the giant, especially because I didn't envision, like when I saw ghost clock menaces, I thought it'd just be like, oh, people saw her floating through window, but she fucking goes Super Saiyan with this ghost clock business.
Yeah, and she's having fun with it too. She's enjoying
Oh yeah,
terrorizing these people.
Miss Kaiju clock.
So we go back to He Remains Flophouse. I don't know where he's staying. He either really
Yes.
loves Asian culture or he's staying in Chinatown temporarily. Because everything in here is Asian.
Yeah, he's just staying at Pier 1, essentially, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, he shows Renslayer his and Miss Minutes his fancy chair, his refrigerator chair. And then they explain to him what's going on, that he created the TVA, but he was murdered by the two Lokis. And they say, we're going to keep you safe, and we need the TVA needs you to come save it. And then they throw some shade at the Lokis, and then He Remains says, okay, we need to go back across the lake to my lab to grab my latest prototype before we go.
I like when she lays it all out to him. He's like, yes, the wizard said as much. Like, I thought that's a really funny way to come back. And then, like, yeah, they really sell the kind of catfight aspect early. Like, Miss Minutes is constantly horning in on Rensaleer's attempt to horn in on her action.
Yeah, because
I thought was kind
Renslayer's being like, he says, oh, something, yes, misses, and she corrects him to miss, right? It's Miss Renslayer.
I'm
Miss
available.
Minutes. Yeah, I can't remember. Is there?
And he's like, yeah, there's also like it's all hearsay because like when Renslayer says, there's countless versions of you and you created the TVA and all that stuff, and he's like, I created the TVA. She's like, yeah, did you not hear the murder part? At least he comes back with like, well, yeah, but that man tried to protect me, and then she's like, oh, well, that's his thing. He's just always switching sides. It's again like all these people are relying on everyone else's eyewitness testimony about something that they have no direct knowledge on. Which I think they play it straight with Victor. It felt plausible of him trying to like, who can I trust here?
Yeah.
Himself
being a con artist, right? Like I think that's good for him to be fairly skeptical. But he also has this book with these magical inventions in it and this So he's primed to accept something, uh,
Hmm.
as far as the story goes, but who
Right.
has the
He's kind of
truth?
expecting, like, yeah, you would be an expectation at some point, like Ouroboros, you'll meet him, right? Like, this is
You
obviously
would
shit
want
from the
to.
future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Eventually, you'll catch up. But yeah, I think you're right. Um, what about what is the line about Wisconsin and lower taxes? I thought that was
Yeah, I
a weird non sequitur.
might just be having fun. I don't know,
Yeah,
because Chicago has fairly high
they do
taxes,
now. Did they do?
but I
Did they
don't
back in the
know.
day?
I don't know.
Like this is pre-income tax. You understand that like Americans didn't have an income tax until like World War One, and it's probably another 30 years before the majority of people had to pay it. So
Is it
talking about like
another fire thing? Like, did they raise taxes to get that city back on
maybe
its feet?
that's usually why taxes get in. You know, it's everything's fine until some disaster happens, and like
Yeah, then
shit,
you
how are
need
we going to pay for
public
all
works
this?
projects. I mean, sure.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's a weird Chicago, Wisconsin thing, maybe.
So the swindled guys catch up with him, and they all have to sneak out a back alley. Loki and Mobius also catch up, and they run smack into these swindled fools and run them off. Yeah, but they fail to find He Remains and Renslayer.
Yeah, like because like the whole time Owen Wilson Mobius has been trying to like keep Loki under wraps and hastily covering up with like when Loki makes someone disappear. Oh, it's
The
amazing!
great,
Look, like it's
yeah,
yeah, all part of the act, kind of folks. But this
love it.
like Mobius is like, yeah, do your Asgardian thing, and he's blows him up with green shit.
Yeah, that works at the World's Fair where people are expecting to see Marvels, but I
I
don't know
guess it
about the
would,
back
right?
alleys of
Like
some
if you're a
Chicago
time
street.
traveler wanting to flash out, go to a World's Fair because people just think
Totally.
you're like the next Edison and they'll want to buy whatever you're doing. That's
Yep.
the place to go for technology indistinguishable from magic.
Seems like it. Then we go over to the boat where He Who Remains loads up his stuff on a ship, and when they're underway, he shows Renslayer in minutes the TVA handbook. And she says that she brought it to him way back 30, 25 years ago. He says how much it meant to him and shows her a drawing of the throughput multiplier, which he thinks could fix the loom. There's also some flirting here, but Renslayer ends up calling him a partner, which makes him immediately drop her off a ship in a lifeboat. I don't know how that worked out. Did she just go to sleep on this journey and the lifeboat was the place because they don't have a cabin and then he dropped her?
Well, so they establish that they're sitting in a lifeboat when they're talking here, because that's also how Miss Minutes can be floating around and nobody see her. They're like over the side, kind of like, I guess on this type of ship they kept that shit hooked up and ready to drop on this ferry. But yeah, in fact I had to rewind this once or twice to figure out. I was watching it, I'm like, what the hell just happened? Because
Yeah.
it wasn't immediately obvious to me that they were sitting in the rowboat the whole time. But
But
that would
then
be a
they're out of the
terrifying
rowboat and
thing. Can you
she's like laying
imagine?
down.
Yeah, well, I
It
think
didn't make
that's the
sense.
thing.
They
That
wanted to do the
how
smash
long does it?
cut and it
Yeah,
didn't quite
how
make
long does it take
sense.
to get to Wisconsin from
It
Chicago in a
can't be more
ferry?
than a couple
Like,
of few hours maybe.
but if it's late at night, you got to go lay down and go to sleep somewhere. Maybe,
I
maybe.
suppose. Can't wait till you
But
get to the lab and then sleep.
she's a sound sleeper that people could scrabble out of the boat and up the side of it before someone, she'd. But that's got to be one of the worst ways to wake up. You're sound asleep and you drop 30 feet and crash to the water. Oh my God. Also,
Yeah.
this is an incredible woman. Gendry from Game of Thrones get in the back of the line. She goes
Oh,
from
that
dead
rowing.
sleep to getting dropped, and she just gets that. She just starts rowing. And she's
Not
only
a
like
chance,
15 minutes
man.
behind them,
Not a
behind the
chance.
steamship. But she's got to be yoked like Olympic
Yeah.
weightlifter, man. I want to see Ramona's traps, is what I want to see.
Yeah. I don't buy that Captain America could make that row, let alone Renslayer. That far or
Especially
that
since,
fast.
again, Kang and Miss Minutes gets like what, a 10-minute head start on her? She like just does not miss a beat.
And once she loses sight of that boat, navigation
she
becomes
does.
a problem.
I don't
Yeah,
think she
you're right.
does,
She
man.
just goes 20 knots or whatever the fuck that boat's doing in her stupid rowboat dinghy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
But this is where we see the pathological partnership thing break down, where he was like kind of borderline to on love with this woman, giving her origami flowers and shit. And then she
Hmm.
says partnership, and instantly all changed.
Which is that's nice. I like that touch. It really shows that it's not necessarily, oh, this Kang views, the world as needing saving. It's more like he wants the glory for it.
Yeah,
He
it's all
wants to be
about
the guy who
him.
saves it.
100%.
And this is the scene where we see, him open the book and say, "Yeah, I've idolized this visionary author, Obi," which is what we know about him is
Hmm.
kind of hilarious. I don't know. He is a visionary of sorts, but
And his book picture at the back of the book, it's just I got the idea, I was looking at a different variant from like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like there's something a little bit more serious and dignified, maybe just the black and white. But like,
mhm.
did He Who Remains do something to Ouroboros that like made him have like
Hmm.
the memory of a goldfish? Because like maybe I'm just building this all from a black and white image of K Wee Kwan, but I got the idea that like he was a little bit more of a serious person in that image.
Well,
And the
that's the
guy
thing.
who sat down
Unless,
and buckled down and wrote this manual is different than the guy who's just constantly like ADD brained, going to the tubes and short term fixing and not think, something about that.
it's
He's
possible. Although I mean, I don't know. I always look at the jacket sleeve photos of authors on books, and they always look so self-serious, right?
Mhm.
Unless you're
That's
Stephen
true.
King. Stephen King is the exception where he just, I don't know, he loves making crazy looking photos on his jacket.
Well, he's a crazy looking dude.
Yeah, I love it. I respect
Stephen
it.
Kang.
Uh
He's a
huh.
variant,
He must be.
the spooky variant.
So they make it. Miss Minutes and He Remains get back to his lab, and he grabs the culmination of his life's work, a little globe-like device that rotates. I I don't know what that is. He's ready to leave.
It's the throughput multiplier. It
Is
looks
that the
just
actual
like
thing?
yeah.
Oh,
I
I
backed up and looked. It looks exactly like
okay.
the drawing of it.
I thought these might be two different devices, but that makes sense. So he's ready to leave, but Miss Minutes suggests that they lay low for a while, and she starts explaining to him how much they meant to each other and their relationship and how much they've been through, and then asks why he never allowed her a real body. Uh,
I think it's getting
he
weird.
he keeps trying to remind her that like I'm not that guy. Like I at
Hmm.
least not yet. Um, but she's just insane with love, and so he has to shut her off.
Yeah, when she superimposes her face on a mannequin, her eyes kind of glitch
God.
out. It's like, oh Jesus, I'm gonna have to like chew my arm off to escape this, like a wolf in a trap.
Yep.
Yeah,
She
the
wants a body so
desperation
she
of
can get
I
it
took
in.
I took home a crazy woman
Yep.
from the bar. What am I going to do?
Oh my god. Yeah. So there's that. Anything more to say about that, or should we get to when Renslayer shows
I-
up?
Yeah, what more can you say about
I
that?
don't know.
Like
It
I
was pretty
said,
great.
when that I because I was like, oh, it's kind of funny that Miss Minutes is kind of jealous of her and like a kid sister kind of way. But when she went the full court press, it was like, holy shit.
Yeah. And I love when she's gonna pop out of this here in a minute when they reactivate her and she's still mid
She's in
sentence,
she's in
but
the
she's
middle of
saying it's a
confessing her
Renslayer.
love.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, never mind. So Renslayer shows up with a crude time stick and says she's the one in charge now. Points it at He Remains. Loki and Mobius show up too, and they try and talk her into helping them. She says she's the only one who can create order, and she's about to zap He Who Remains when Sylvie shows up and blasts them all. And she's gonna kill He Who Remains, but he protests that he's not the man she thinks he is, which surprisingly works. Um, they open a time door for him, and Loki and Mobius follow him through it. Stop there for a second.
So like, why? I have my own idea, but I'm curious what you think. Why did Sylvie stay her hand?
I'm not really sure. I don't know if this is compassion for a man who she knows is manifestly not him yet, or if this is a ugh, I can't I don't want to continue working on this, right? Like her whole I guess it's probably more the latter. Like her whole thing has been I just want to check out and not have to deal with any of this. I just want to live a mundane ass McDonald's life. But here I am getting wrapped back up into this thing. And if I kill him, it probably only starts another chain reaction that makes it worse. So fine, go do your thing. I'm leaving. It's my feeling, my immediate thought on it.
I can't help but look through it in the lens of like what we know canonically about Loki, and that he is kind of like the villain, but kind of like out of circumstance, and maybe he wanted to do more, but like, he's got these expectations from his father and the love of his mother and the jealousy of this older brother that's overshadowing him. And Sylvie probably went through that too, and yet she came through the end of it like being this hunted, persecuted person that then became this freedom fighter, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm wondering if she's thinking, what would happen to me if I was in my villain era, to
Mm-hmm.
borrow some Taylor Swiftism. She's in her villain era, and some asshole with the sword came out of a time gate and said, "All right, villain, you're gonna die right now." And the idea of like, well, that who was I was, but it's not who I am now, and now I'm back to, I've got that power over someone else. I think that's what you know. That's what I got out. The fact that like the hypocrisy of her ending someone before they had a chance to learn and grow, and as frustrated as she is with Loki, and the TVA giving him the tools he needs to become He Who Remains, is like, well, how can anyone? It felt like an act of faith. And that's
Yeah.
why ultimately, like, if without this moment, I've been a little bit more frustrated with the episode, because it's just been Loki fruitlessly trying to have the same argument where, but like having this, I thought was a grace note of her applying her own experience, and having genuine empathy, which is what led her to this whole freedom struggle in the first place. The fact she is empathetic. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that's what I got out of it.
Okay, I can see it for sure. Um, yeah, I guess I expected more from that line. I'm trying to connect the dots between the line that Loki tells her at the end of the second episode, I think, where he says, uh, "Running is easier" or something like that, or "Staying is harder." Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to connect that to what I'm seeing from her, and that doesn't seem to have landed the way I expected it to. That feels like a line to me that's meant to actually result in someone changing their mind. But when she comes back,
Yeah,
she's still trying to accomplish the same goal, you know?
yeah. But also, I guess it flies in the face of like, Mobius asking her like, well, not Mobius, Loki. Well, what will you do if the variants are true and he comes back? She goes, well, I'll just kill them all. So she's
Mm-hmm.
also, kind of put on the spot that like, well, here's a Kang variant. And
Yeah.
but it feels like it's a Sisyphean task. Like, if
Uh
you
huh.
want to prevent Kang from returning and you want infinite branches, you're going to be in an infinite hunting mission to kill all the Kangs that pop up.
Yeah. You will need every Loki in every timeline to be working on killing Kangs, probably.
Yeah. And there's also something, I guess we should get the discussion she has with Renslayer. God damn it. I almost got the whole podcast without doing it. Renslayer. The conversation she has with Renslayer I thought was also very interesting.
Okay. Yeah, let's turn to that. Because Sylvie turns her attention to Renslayer now. She doesn't kill her. Instead, she opens a time door at the end of time and kicks her through it. And she sees the dead, He Who Remains, and the crumbling palace. And Miss Minute says she knows one of He Who Remains' huge secrets about Renslayer that is going to make her real angry.
That line about how crippling obsession can be when it's focused on, like, I've never like had this
Yeah.
obsession where I wanted to kill someone before, but I've had like the romantic types. And as fun as
Mm,
it is to be obsessed, when it's like something that's in the back of your throat, it's a smell in your nostrils, it's a feeling on your skin, it's like a wool in your brain that keeps you from thinking straight, that you're just
visceral.
like all the time, having thoughts of this person. I really thought that was yeah, like that I think the other part of it is maybe she is extrapolating to like, okay, if I'm gonna kill every who remains and I'm gonna have infinite timelines, I'm gonna be doing this shit for infinity. And I think she thinks that maybe it's not he who remains is the problem, it's this Renslayer who is looking for a vessel to acquire power. And if she can kill
Mm,
Renslayer, then maybe that then all the he who remains will just be scientists and there won't, but I think she's wrong. But I liked the 1-2 punch of Kang begging for mercy and then her instantly putting her vengeance and her anger onto Renslayer. I thought that was really effective.
yeah. And then as far as cliffhangers go, I feel like this is a fairly good one. Um, it's not about what is a character going to do. It's more about what does a character know. It's a secret that's going to make her real angry about herself, I think is how this is phrased. And
Yeah.
that to me says that she is not nearly as important or as much of a partner as she thought she was in the first place. That's the logical place that my brain goes.
Yeah. And even if Kang does have a recording of him saying what a valuable, like now that we know he's a flim flam man to his bottommost DNA,
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff is suspect because that could just be things he's saying. That'd be a great
Yes.
manipulation. If you know your partner's obsessed with not giving people credit, like if you just pretend to give him a little bit of credit to keep him on the hook, it's pretty flim flam confidence man thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think that Renslayer knows that about Kang or about He Who Remains. It's because she says the partner thing, and that has unintended consequences, right? Like she would not have said the thing to him about being partners if she knew who he was to his core.
Oh, 100%. But like now that she does know that in a future date, if he does make her a partner
Okay, yeah, yeah.
in some kind of bullshit, like that's a great manipulation tactic, you know?
Hmm. Would she
Like a
buy it?
narcissist that never
Would she
says I
buy it?
love you could consciously say to it like right as the partner they're about to like pull off and they're going to lose their narcissistic supply could be like, "Oh, I love you and I've always
Sure,
loved you," to
sure.
keep them
But
on the
would
hook.
but
So
would
that's
that
like,
person buy it? You know?
well, I mean, that's the psychology of it.
Uh
It's
huh.
something that you've always wanted to hear say, and even though it goes like the fact that they're saying it now, it's like, what if it is genuine? What if this is a breakthrough we're having? Oh my
Yeah, can't
god!
give that up.
Yeah, it's a way to read. That's like I said. It's. I think it'd be an effective manipulation. I'm not saying
Uh
that's
huh.
what it's
Yeah.
happening for sure. I'm just saying that's. I can't help but think about that now in that term.
Yeah, for sure.
I haven't seen anyone say this on the internet, so I have permission. I want to ask permission to coin Kang's moldering corpse here at the end of time. He who is remains.
I love it. Yeah.
I
Because
don't know.
boy,
Like
yeah, the palace is
I don't know if
crumbling, but he is too.
if we'll have a zombie Kang at some point, because like I can't help but wonder that with Doctor Strange multiverse madness of
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if there is, if we got some zombie. Oh, it'd also be super cool for a Halloween episode to have a zombie Kang.
Yeah, there you
He
go.
who is remains. Spread it around the internet.
Love it.
I'm sure I'm the 10th person to think to talk about it today.
Yep. That's the end of the episode. Real curious to see what this secret is, but I think I got an idea.
Same, brother. Shall we get to the feedback? We got a smattering of feedback. Marvel at baldmove.com is how you get in touch with us to tell us all of your nasty thoughts about Kang and Miss Minutes, all your
Mm-hmm.
erotic fan fiction as his
Any kind of body he
hands
wants to give her.
his hands caress her clock face body.
Okay, he's
He
just
caress
gonna
her
fuck her
face
in
and
the
her
clock
body at the
form.
same
All
time.
right.
That's kinky.
Yeah.
Uh Yeah, I feel like anyone writing fan fiction, like erotic fan fiction, the Miss Minutes would be a clock. They wouldn't, have
At
her in a
least
body.
at least in the first encounter. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe when you get to the second collection of erotic fan fiction, then you
Mm.
experiment the corporal body. But you got to fuck the clock at first. Jules Marvel at baldmove.com wrote in and said, "Hey guys, I'm from the Netherlands, and I was listening to your food automat discussion as seen in Loki. It's a pretty fun or nostalgic thing, which was invented in Germany around 1900, and it's still a very big thing in the Netherlands today. You can find them everywhere, most train stations, and in pretty much every city center. There's a local fritteur which is a very common Dutch fast food restaurant, though I wouldn't call it a restaurant exactly. It's often quite small, and almost everyone prefers takeaway to eat at home or on the go. They never have pie, though. No healthy stuff as well. It always contains very unhealthy Dutch deep fried fast food snacks like croquettes or a frikandellen. Thanks for your coverage. I enjoyed a lot. I got to get to the Netherlands. I got to experience the joys of an automat. I got to get this frikandellen inside me. This croquetten.
Man,
Croquetten.
I feel like this is a missed opportunity. You've got the Chicago World's Fair at around the time that the automat was invented. Have an automat at this fair, right? Have this be a touchstone
Yeah.
back to the TVA.
I guess it's still like what's this 1892 or is 1898?
Three.
It's still 7 years before it'll be invented. But
Oh,
yeah, you
is
could have
it?
some
Okay.
maybe yeah, he said it in the 1900. Maybe
He
there's a
said
crazy
around, but
Bavarian
yeah,
in the
yeah,
background
yeah,
trying to like gin up, and Mobius is like, well, I don't know, I could you know, I
yeah.
could
No, I
that'd be a
thought that
fun
would
idea.
be fun, but okay.
Dork the Ninjas wrote in, says, subject line, Marvel's TV shakeup, says, just want to write in to talk about the big new shakeup Marvel had, starting with their new Daredevil Born Again series. Apparently, Kevin Feige completely scrapped everything that was been done for the new series. According to reports, the show was a mess, and they're restarting with all new directors and writers. The big takeaway from this is that they are completely restructuring how they do their TV going forward on Disney Plus. The main thing is that Kevin is taking his hands off being the shadow showrunner on all of the shows, instead working to get a proper writing and TV show structures in these shows, trying to move away from just stretching movies to proper shows going forward. Hopefully, Disney can take the hint and fix this problem with the rest of their shows, mainly looking at you, Star Wars, from the security of the lawn. If you're curious about what the lawn means, it's a whole thing that happened the last season of Ahsoka.
I
Things got testy.
don't think this is gonna fix their problems.
Well, the ironic thing is, what I've heard from insiders is that the writer strike is what caused this. The writer strike was meant to address some of the things that like the big streaming platforms are doing, which was trying to avoid having traditional writers room, trying to have less and less people do more and more things. And they are trying to get some good PR by saying, okay, fans, we've heard you. We're actually going to spin up. This was not a creative decision. This is something that was forced on them by the Writers Guild. And they are wisely putting their best foot forward and saying, this is a fan friendly. We've heard you. Our scripts suck. Kevin stretched 6 ways, but that was the goal. That was not a creative decision. That was how much can we make off of fans with the bare minimum of investment. That was an AMC Studios decision, not what we're used to seeing from Marvel Studios. And when they took the content switch and went from 1 or 2 movies a year to that plus 5, 6 series a year, Kevin just couldn't keep up. But they
That
wouldn't
makes
have given
sense.
up that strategy. It's important to, I think, it's important to realize they wouldn't have given up that strategy had the Writers
No.
Guild got defeated. They would have kept on doing it. They would have replaced Kevin with some other stooge, and they would have keep on shitting out this stuff until they went out of business. So
Yep, that's the
my
thing.
take is the Writers Union saved Disney Plus if it turns out that they, in fact, can be saved.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't do much to. It doesn't do much to, I guess, make me feel better about the direction that's heading. They're still going to try and pump out as much as possible. They're
But if
still
they
going
spin
to
up
press
like a
the
legit
tolerance limits.
like if they have a writers room with a showrunner that has ownership and pride over their show, like
Sure, that's fine, but they're going to have 12 of those going every single year,
you
right?
can do that. You can have 12 hit
You
shows a
can't.
year.
You can't. I mean, not on a single property. It's just going to burn people out. That's the thing.
Well,
Like,
that's on the demand side. I'm saying from a
yeah, yeah.
supply side, I
Oh,
think
you
you
can
could
do that,
do
yes, on the supply side.
yeah. And
If
I
there are
don't know,
that many
man.
talented writers and showrunners and everything.
I don't know if there's that many hardcore Marvel and Star Wars fans that would literally just that's all they do. They just watch Marvel and Star Wars stuff. That's been one of my concerns before we even knew that the quality was kind of iffy. Like they're, like it's yeah, people like these big tent Marvel movies and everything building up, but it's like Marvel still hasn't
Where's the
demonstrated to
excitement? How do you
me.
maintain excitement on
I know,
something
that's what
that
I'm
comes out
saying.
every week? We talk about this with our own content. We have
Yes.
gone to a more event structured kind of a release schedule for a lot of our
Right.
more special stuff because we want it to be fucking special. And you can't
Yes.
have something be special if you constantly have access to it
Yeah.
over and over and over again. It just won't be special. So
Right.
how do you keep people engaged in something that is not special if it's taking up larger and larger parts of their day and week?
Yeah. Like Christmas is awesome, but if you had to do it 12 months out of a year, it would just be life and then it wouldn't be
Yeah.
awesome anymore.
Yeah.
So
Wouldn't
it's
be
nice to
special.
have, yeah, like, oh, like absence is part of something that makes the heart fonder, especially when you're talking about, things and not people. Like, yeah, sometimes taking a break and oh, you know what, you know what I could really go for right now? A fucking Spider-Man movie.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I could, it's been a while since we've seen Iron. I'd like to see, but they just never give you that chance to miss it. And then when you've got the subpar quality, that's
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
the
real
death
kiss
knell.
of
That's
death.
just. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm happy. I saw that news there, Dork. Thanks for sharing it with us. But number one, it came out literally the week after they came with a deal saying that yes, they can no longer do what they were doing, that they have to have X amount of writers and an actual writer and this and that. It's this streaming thing that they're like, oh, this isn't a TV production, this is a streaming production, so we don't have to adhere to
Yeah,
the
that's
previous
bullshit.
guild agreement. That's 100% horse shit,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
so
it's just
yeah,
what they did with DVDs and all that stuff, right? It's
but it does give me like,
every time it changes, the business model changes. They protest and say, "Oh, we can't possibly give you a cut of this because it's not profitable enough, or it's so different from the other thing."
yeah, no, 100%. And I'm a little bit more, I guess, bullish on it than you are because, like, to me, this is the bare minimum you would need to get quality shows, and they're doing that bare minimum. And if they hire good
Sure.
people that have an appreciation for the lore or are at least willing to learn the lore and then the other thing that has like they have to have like some kind of a Council of Kang situation where they get these showrunners in a room for a retreat for a couple of weeks a year to like get their fucking heads together because that's the
Mm-hmm.
other thing that is especially evident on the Star Wars side where they're just like, oh, we'll just get some visionary well-loved directors and just let you do this one and you do that sequel and you do that sequel and then you do this one and then it turns out to be a fucking mess because nobody talks to each other. In fact, that they
Yep.
like on the Star Wars sequel series, it felt like people actively fighting for the wheel, careening from side to side of the road. So it won't
Mm-hmm.
solve all those problems, but it is a step in the right direction, and I welcome it, even though they were forced to at literal bankruptcy point. Like you're gonna like kill the goose that killed the golden egg. Kill the goose that killed the golden egg. Yes, that is the murderous
It's
golden goose
revenge.
killer.
Uh huh.
Gonna just stop at nothing. That gosling was abused all its life, and now it's by golden geese, and it's the hot new series on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
It's a step in the right direction. So yeah, Marvel at baldmove.com if you want to talk about inside industry baseball, why Loki has learned to stop worrying and love the TVA. If you think He Who Is Remains is a execrable dad joke or legit funny, Marvel at baldmove.com. That's going to be it for our coverage, our official coverage of Loki here. Until next week, anyway. We'll be back then. Thanks for listening. If you want to see what else we're doing, we're about to spin up. We just announced it yesterday. We're doing both For All Mankind and Fargo. It's going to be a double prestige winter for us. Very excited about that. If you want to see the other things we're doing, we just released our review of Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. A little less comic booky that one. A little less of a romp that one. Everything that we do, we publish and tell people about on our social media at Bald Move, except for TikTok. It's at Baldest Move there. Finally, if you'd like to support us, get ad-free feeds, tons of bonus content. Support.baldmove.com is how you get tuned into that. That's it. We'll see you next week. Until then, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Jim.
Later.